Ambassador?
Yeah, I think we've got to give him the benefit of the horror that surrounded him. I mean, I think it's right. I'm not really that much of a historian, but just before he went to Gettysburg, he got a report that 6,000 had been killed in Virginia and 16,000 killed in Pennsylvania, and he's sitting at his desk with 25,000 dead souls and their families weighing him down.
Right.
I mean, that is, when I read that, I said, Bush has got it easy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he stirred up Iraq, but altogether in Iraq, not as many people have been killed as Abraham Lincoln had to deal with conscientiously in the same week. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we can be self-righteous about looking back and judging him. I mean, the fact that he survived and held the nation together makes him amongst the greatest of human beings. And I don't think it was imperfections. I think it was just really him. And he had a soul power or a soul center that he followed, so that when the temperance people said that Grant got drunk, he said, find out what kind of liquor he drinks and go get some of the other generals.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was a real human being. Now, I know you Christians will be shocked, but I think Jesus was that kind of man. I don't think the Holy Ghost, roller kind of vision of manhood and sainthood is, I mean, I would say that these men who struggle with life as it really is are saints in the very best sense of the word, with all of their foibles and weaknesses.
I was just curious, did Martin Luther King ever talk about Lincoln? Do you ever have a recollection?
No, he didn't talk about Lincoln so much as he identified with Lincoln. I mean, he saw the burden on him as, I can't complain. Look what Lincoln had to deal with. And, but he agonized over the death of one person, and even more over the killing. I mean, when our folks threw rocks, he just, that was the hardest thing in the world for him, for people to reject nonviolence, even to the point of cursing and throwing rocks, as we did in a number of occasions, because he said that is what is going to destroy our movement. It's not the racists, it's our own frustration and violence. Violence cannot create a peaceful society. And that, I think that was the agony, that he talked about theoretically. What would he have done in Germany with Hitler? Violence and nonviolence. And would it have been possible, was there anything that Lincoln could have done to avoid a civil war, which killed fourth of our nation?
620,000.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it also, though, as you were saying, Darlene, put African Americans in a position where they could fight for their own freedom. And that was a very powerful and important element. So there's a paradox, in a sense, in the importance of recognizing that violence is not something that ends conflict and strife between people. I think there remains, and there will probably remain through human nature, an argument about whether or not at different moments it is important to defend oneself. But perhaps we can get into that.
I think that's one thing Dr. King was very clear about. There's aggressive violence, which is unacceptable. There's retaliatory violence, which is unacceptable morally. But defensive violence, and I would put, the defending the Union in the category of defensive violence. And that Lincoln went to as far as he could possibly go to avoid war with the South.
And the other thing about Lincoln's use of violence,
He never bragged about that. He never embraced that. He was always tormented by the bloodshed. But if you look at his speeches, he always said, "We are not your enemies. We're your friends. Right. We're your brothers." Right. He was always extending the hand open, not the fist. I mean, he was trying to heal the wounds occasioned by the fracture and fighting, but not intending to rupture completely the bonds of affection and respect. And he never denigrated other people's humanity. You know, I may kill you, but that doesn't mean I, in any way, do not respect your humanity.
That's right.
You know,
I completely agree with Ambassador Young. He went as far as he possibly could throughout his presidential career, both to prevent the war. It's clear in his first inaugural, we are not enemies but friends. And he really went as far as he could within the context of the Republican platform. And then by the end of the war, seeking to heal the wounds with malice towards none, with charity toward all. And he felt deeply the effects of the carnage, the apocalyptic carnage that was being wrought in this nation.
Well, let me take a cue then and switch this from mainly a historical conversation to a conversation that uses history to think about our present. These are profound lessons to learn about what it means to treat your neighbor as a brother or a sister. These are profound lessons to think about how to live in a community that might possibly enjoy peace. And yet, ways that we talk about politics, the ways that we talk about social relations, oftentimes people lament the degree to which there isn't that sense of generosity, that there isn't that sense of a belief in community. I can think of no better way to understand the relevance of Lincoln's legacy today to know that at least for a couple of days in the news, we were discussing whether or not there was a right to secede in relation to a state in this union. So where are we in terms of these values today? And what, if anything, does a concentrated contemplation about Lincoln, his times, and all those that made up those times, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, William Seward, Gerrit Smith, a variety of different people, what can that teach us about the ways in which we deal with these issues today?
Well, I think Roosevelt took the legacy of Reconstruction and tried to restore it in the New Deal. And people ran from economic development, from empowering the poor, almost until Roosevelt. And I think that Lyndon Johnson saw ending poverty as a continuation of this legacy from Lincoln to Roosevelt. And I think if he had not gotten involved in the war in Vietnam, we would have stabilized not only this nation, but we would have stabilized the whole world economically. Now, I consider myself a kind of slumdog economist because I was in Congress when they broke up the Bretton Woods agreements. Now, what's that got to do with Lincoln? Following in the tradition, here was Franklin Roosevelt trying to do a fair, stable economy for the whole world on a gold standard. And we broke it up, and it seems like we went on an oil standard where it's every man for himself. And the challenge for Barack Obama is to restore the economic stability that had almost never been restored since the time of the Civil War. I mean, we had political unity, but we've never had an economic unity in this country, and that's been the undercurrent. So when historians talk about Lincoln without talking about the economic realities of Reconstruction and the economic realities of the Depressions, and the inflation that was World War I and II, I think we miss part of the reality.